Hi, welcome back to Marlene and Friends in service for a healthy world for humans and non-humans alike. My esteemed guest today, the very lovable Dr. Lisle from Esteem Dynamics, who makes you feel better just by being in the room with him, and I will guarantee that that's the truth. A big warm welcome, Dr. Lisle.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's 5 years since we discussed The Pleasure Trap, your hugely international bestseller. But I am so excited to hear the news on the street that you actually have a new book coming out and introducing a biologically grounded perspective on human nature with accompanying insights into how to improve your life. Can you share some of that information with us about the new book? When will it be available?
Let's see. I think it's probably going to be we're going to have it in our hands, I think, by next summer. So we're going to finish writing it by the end of this year, and then it'll take sort of 6 months to get it all together. So I think right about this time, maybe a little earlier, hopefully.
Wow, fantastic. Well, a much needed read. Can't wait to read it. And you have the solution to one of the greatest mysteries of the ages, right? The puzzle of individual differences with the human personalities. And I know you're going to explain that in great detail as well as we have a little chat right now. So I also wanted to ask, would you share, you're currently doing research right now at True North Health on recovery curves in terms of dietary change on the dopamine stimulation. And we both know, right, sugar, stress, poor gut health, trigger anxiety, which right now is huge globally. So is this an area that you're covering in your research?
This is, that research is now, I'm not involved in that. In other words, actually I sort of am, because Alan's always asking me what I think and sort of passing through the research designs on that. But we have a scientist there, Tasha Myers, who's conducting that research. I think that we've had a few surprises. So some research was done at True North maybe 3 or 4 years ago, looking for some what we thought was super obvious things about taste neuroadaptation. So we expected after people water fasted that we would be able to see hypersensitivity in being able to detect subtle differences in taste, and we didn't find it. And so this is a great example of how research doesn't go the way you think it does. Like we know it's there. It's super obvious to anybody that's ever fasted. It's just how we tested it appears to be an ineffective way of testing it. So I've read from various authors that very often science follows what a clinician already knows. And this is going to be, I actually rolled my eyes when Alan and Tasha were thinking through that study. I thought, well, how stupid can you get? Of course that's going to work. That isn't even worth doing. And it turns out, no, there's some quirks in there that we didn't understand about how that mechanism works. And so we are learning. So once again, so a lot of research that we will do at True North is not actually us learning anything new. It's learning the details of what we already know. And so we already know that fasting and diet are two of the best things that you can ever do to try to get recovery from almost any illness. And so not any illness, but almost any illness. And so that's we know that, but we're in the business of now documenting what we spent 35 years observing.
Fantastic. Well, we know that an anti-inflammatory diet, people used to always say that anxiety and depression were caused by a deficit of serotonin in the brain. And we all know now that although serotonin is that brain neurotransmitter, the science and the work that you do, it shows that 80 to 90% of that serotonin in our body is actually made in our digestive tract. Is that right? So anxiety, you can then explain as an expert on a biochemical level by the health of our gut.
We don't know. That's an area of research that right now doesn't have consensus. And so we're going to learn. That's a it's a hot new thing in the world, obviously, for the last few years, and it's going to get hotter. I actually gave a grand rounds presentation at a major hospital system in Michigan about 2-3 years ago. And I was astounded that the physicians were very interested in the microbiome. So
Yeah.
this is a whole new world that is opened up to human beings as we now understand that that this thing is a lot more complicated and different than we were thinking even a decade ago. So the frontiers keep pushing back, and we're going to keep finding out that healthy food and fasting winds up being the way to go.
Yeah. Well, even as you just said earlier, from our own experiences of what we do with our own clients or students or patients for you, I was working with kids here with autism, and, Doug, it's just incredible when you change the diet, you see everything. So for me, that's like, wow, that's just unbelievable, looking at the dietary, anti-inflammatory diet for the gut and the brain. So an amazing result, and I was hugely excited about that. One topic that's obviously very much in the public right now, of course, is the functions of the immune system and COVID-19, which is bringing, as you know, as a psychologist, can you talk a little bit about the connection between nutrition and the emotional stress that's a pandemic as well in the world right now?
I think that that the most important thing that we want to do to keep healthy winds up, I would say, let me try to make this advice a little more broad than just this. Where we get into trouble almost always is when we get away from the fundamentals. Mm-hmm. That's true in baseball and cricket over there. And it's true in everything. It's true in your relationships. And it's certainly true with respect to your immune system. So the most important thing are the fundamentals. So the fundamentals are, diet, sleep, exercise. Mm-hmm. These are the things that are going to be the most important things that we do. Sunshine when you can get it, fasting if you need it. So diet, sleep, exercise, though, are sort of the daily fundamentals. And when people get anxious and then they stay up late, on their devices looking for the next little sliver of reassurance or panic about COVID, then they get themselves short of sleep, then they don't feel like exercising, then they don't have the energy to put together healthy food, and then we wind up with sort of a spiral towards mediocrity, and that's when you're more vulnerable to everything. So the most important thing to me when it comes to maintaining a good immune system is making sure that we don't let things get out of perspective to the point where we essentially don't address the fundamentals. There's a time and a place for not addressing the fundamentals. If you are if the Romans are attacking your fort, in 37 AD, and you don't have time to sleep, okay? You're designed by nature to let your adrenaline take over when there are legitimate threats that need to be addressed, and you are then it's appropriate for life to get out of balance. So if you fall in love, you're going to be staying up all night talking and doing other things. Your life's going to get out of balance. So there's going to be times when life gets out of balance. It isn't that we should all live like highly enlightened Buddhist monks. That's not who we are, and that's not what our lives look like. However, COVID is not something to lose your balance over. COVID is a worldwide process. It's a new threat on the block. We know what it is. It's almost entirely, but not completely, a threat of elderly people who are immune compromised. That's what it is. Are there going to be some exceptions? Yes. I actually looked into, in the United States here, they've got all the schools closed, which is an amazing decision for me to hear. Yeah. It's actually extraordinary. I never thought I would see this. The rationale is even worse than the fact that this is what they're doing. So I actually examined the stats on the threat to young people, i.e. people 20 or under. The flu, I believe, so far in the United States this year has killed, it was right around 700 people under 20. I think COVID is less than 20 people under 20. So the flu is like 30 to 40 times more lethal than COVID for young people. And yet it's behind COVID that we're closing schools. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do? Okay, so this is now human beings in a panic sometimes aren't too rational. Mm-hmm. Don't let that take over your life. Let's make sure that whatever COVID is doing to your life, we don't let it throw us away from our fundamentals. Diet, sleep, exercise, and if you ever see the sun, go out and get some.
Perfect, you know. There's never been more positive information about eating a vegan or whole food plant-based diet. Why do you think there's still so much resistance?
There's many reasons for that resistance. They come from every quarter. I was just speaking to a person today that has been in psychotherapy attempting to figure out issues with weight and so on. And the therapist was very disturbed about the idea of a whole plant foods-based diet, thought that it was part of the person's disease, really was, almost threatened the person with firing them as a client if they pursued that.
Exactly.
At which point after the interview, the shoe's on the other foot, the client's going to fire the therapist after the day, very gently and nicely, that the therapist needs fired. So obviously there's something very threatening about this from the standpoint of that therapist. The therapist herself has some weight problems. So God forbid that the client actually start to address the underlying drug-like addiction to junk food that she is in fact addressing, and that the therapist then be put in a position where she has to confront it herself. So you have to remember that very few physicians, dietitians, experts, or anything else are ready to take on the pleasure trap. They don't want to do it. Okay, so they don't want to do it. They don't want to look at the evidence. It's threatening. It disturbs also. It puts them in a position where they would be embarrassed about advice they've given throughout their career. Yeah. So sometimes there's a high social cost as well, as well as the fact that the person is not ready themselves to stare any facts down and accept the fact that some self-discipline in this arena is actually what's rational and what's called for to solve a variety of a large percentage of human problems. I don't believe that there is a problem as big on this earth as the pleasure trap. In other words, when it comes to the sum total of human misery, both physical and psychological, there's nothing as big as this. Yeah, we've got worries about the climate. We've got political upheaval. We've got religious disagreements around the world. We have possible wars. We've usually got a little bit of warfare somewhere on the planet. That all over the planet and spreading is a quiet, individual, self-destructive process that essentially robs people of their physical and psychological well-being. And that is the biggest problem that humanity faces. And that's a problem that, fortunately, you don't have to solve for humanity. All you have to do is solve it for yourself. But solving for it yourself winds up being remarkably difficult when there's a Greek chorus of experts telling you you're going the wrong direction. So of course, yeah, there's many incentives from the food industry to the miseducation and willful ignorance in medicine, all over the place. Nobody is interested, as John McDougall said many years ago, which is more lucrative, $100,000 bypass surgery or $25 worth of vegetables and a pair of walking shoes. That kind of summed it up.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. I mean, and Doug, eating, as you know, and I know it's one of the most basic ways we all take care of ourselves, and disruptions in food and activity routines have obviously people rethinking how they define wellness. I know we've had a lot more interest since COVID-19, but I wanted to ask you to share, do you think that it's possible to view all food habits as addictions?
All food habits?
Yeah, you know, is it possible to view all people's food habits as an actual addiction?
Oh, yeah, the proper or accurate way to view this is to use the concept of addiction on a continuum. Okay,
Right.
this is actually now going to be accurate. So instead of doing it the way, the reason, Marlene, why people have words is that words are actually discrete.
Mm-hmm.
So that we can say tall and short. We don't have to say 5'11" and 3/4. Okay. So there's a huge economy, and actually the design of the way the mind works is it requires discrete entities called words and concepts. However, we see that in the real world, things are on continua. Okay, so the truth of the matter is, at the ends of continua, we feel like we can see discrete categories. So someone who is drinking 3 bottles of wine a day, we can say, okay, that's an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who's having champagne on New Year's Eve, we don't say that that's an alcoholic. So we can sort of see at the far ends of a continuum, it's very clear, but in the middle of the continuum, it's muddy. And that's because it isn't categorical, it's a continuum. So the problems of eating are on the continuum of an addictive process. For some people, choose your criterion, 25% overweight. Do we want to call that person is now an addict? In other words, they're an addict in my judgment when I tell them what to do about it. Okay, and they can see clearly that it's in their best interest to do something about it, and then they don't do it. Well, what do we call that? Okay, so now how big of an addiction is it? Well, how do we want to define that?
Yeah.
How in the psychiatric circles, they try to define it by how much disruption there is to the person's life. So that disruption may be minor. Mm-hmm. Someone may be sort of walking around 25 pounds overweight, and they feel pretty decent about themselves. They feel fine about themselves. They're 50 years old, and they don't have any looming health threats that they know. And so what do we want to call that? Well, I'd call that a mild addiction. I'd call that, that's like a 2 or 3 cup a day coffee drinker, okay? That's not someone whose life is a disaster. Their life is just a little bit not the way it should be, okay? Mm-hmm. That's, in other words, there's an upside to their existence about how they would feel about themselves, how healthy their body would be, how well they would function if they didn't have that 25 pounds. But by virtue of their halfway reasonable decision-making and their fairly fortunate genetics, they're not paying as big a price, okay? That would be the equivalent of someone, for example, who might be drinking 2 or 3 glasses of wine a couple times a week. It's like, what do we want to call that, okay? And you try to take it away and they don't want to take it away, but it's not destroying their life. They're not walking into their work stumbling down. So what do we want to call that? Well, I'd call that addiction light. Okay? Okay, so if we think of addiction on a continuum of disaster, not being there at all, then I think your question becomes obvious. In other words, basically the entire Western world is in an intermediate level addiction. The average person is in an intermediate level addiction where the price that they're paying for the food that they're eating is reasonably high. Okay, it's reasonably high. I know this because as a psychologist, I'm talking to people every day about issues in their lives. And so particularly I would say for women, but also for men, but particularly for women, the impact on their feeling about their attractiveness, if they're carrying around an extra 30 or 40 pounds, they may not be particularly unhealthy at 45 years old, but they are psychologically in pain. They are feeling not competitive. They are feeling somewhat self-disgusted. This is not fat shaming, for example, from the culture. This is your own mind understanding that you are putting yourself in a competitive dilemma where you are handicapping your ability to compete. And it doesn't matter if you're happily married, you're still competing. Okay, so animals never stop competing. And one of the most important things that is true about human beings and all animals. I'll say this, and it's a little crass, but like John McDougall, the older I get, the older I get, the more blunt my tongue gets.
Yeah,
Okay.
cool.
Okay. And the truth is that something that is sort of avoided and not acknowledged, and sometimes not certainly learned and not taught in psychotherapy and psychology school, is that the prime focus of a human animal is like any other animal. You are a sexual competitor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You can't help it. We can deny it. You can hide under a blanket and pretend it isn't there. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's blatantly obvious.
Yeah.
Okay. And so as a result, how you feel about yourself is significantly impacted by how well you think you are doing in terms of self-presentation in this domain. Okay? In fact, when people, we know that they are extremely mentally ill, the first thing that we see is that they stop preening. Okay? You know, when an animal is really sick, it stops trying to look good.
Yeah.
Okay? I have worked in nursing homes when people still had some life in them. And when Horace moved into the bed next door, Mabel got out her lipstick.
It's true.
Totally. So the point is that so the pleasure trap and its impact on self-confidence and self-esteem is actually underappreciated, denied, and not faced squarely. And yet, you know, here in our neck of the woods, we try to face it squarely, and we try to not get caught into the trap of, you know, intuitive eating, loving yourself the way you are. Like, no, there's a reason why you've got a self-critical voice inside of you when you're not doing a good job. It's painful. It's the same way painful that your ankle when you just sprained it is painful. Your ankle's supposed to be painful. We don't want to talk ourselves out of that pain. We want to understand that we're trying to do things to regain our health so that the pain goes away. The same thing is true with respect to our health and fitness. The psychological pain you have when you're struggling with this is actually a design feature of the organism. It's not anything wrong with you. Your mind is basically telling you, you need to address this problem. And we're going to continue to have, you're going to feel this emotional ankle pain for as long as you remain steadfast in an addictive process where you're not taking care of business. So yeah, there's obviously a huge amount of misunderstanding in the world of psychology about how this mind is really working. We can see clearly from this angle if we start with some basic concepts. Your mind squawks at you when there's a reason to squawk. And it's going to keep squawking as long as you keep giving it a reason. And so, and obviously, the great dilemma of our time being the pleasure trap, where the world's stimuli has now changed so dramatically that the tools that you were given through your natural history are not competent to deal with this. If they go off on their own and do what it is that they want to do to feel right, you will self-destruct. So it requires unusual awareness and self-discipline to consistently act against it and get good at that so that you can have the life you deserve.
You know, you're the most practical person. You're the only psychologist that's ever made sense to me in the world. Because I actually see psychologists that come to me for health counseling, right? And it's all dietary, of course, all dietary related. But you know, Dr. Lisle, you're so practical. You say it how it is. You don't dress it up in any fancy way at all. It's like just so fantastic the way you express and explain everything. You know, one thing that many people are really anxious about is dementia. How do you approach that fear when people speak to you or book counselling with you for that?
About dementia?
Yeah.
Well, I think that, I mean, there's different aspects about that we could think about. The aspect of being a caregiver or the aspect of yourself becoming demented. I think that's a if ever there was a motivation, certainly we don't want to die of a heart attack, and we don't want to have cancer, and we don't want to be beating ourselves up our whole life over not facing the pleasure trap and getting fit. But if there's one thing we don't want, it's to lose our faculties. Yeah. And what we want to do there, the solution to that problem is there's a way to play the game in life, and that is we play as smart as we can, and we must accept the results. I turned 60 this year, and I've been bracing myself against it quietly, and then it happened. It's like now 61's almost here. It's like this is really happening. There's no escape. Okay, so you play the game as intelligently as you can, and there are results that we must face. So if you are a great quarterback, someday will be your day to retire. And if you are a great lawyer, there will be a day that you need to retire. What you want is that you want to, is what Alan calls it, you want to live till you die.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about most animals in the wild is that they're really quite functional until their last few days. So even if they're fortunate enough to have lived to a very old age, it's going to turn out that they've actually got quite a bit of function almost to the end. That kind of makes sense. We don't see a lot of that. We see people with debilitating illnesses because those illnesses are unnatural disease processes that are taking place. But I don't think it needs to be that way. And there's nothing in principle about your mind that it should be self-destructing earlier than anything else. So in principle, this ship should quietly go down all at the same time. And in fact, that's what happens to many people. They may have a few bad days or a few very tired days at the end, but they should not be demented for 5 or 10 years. Or the mind should not go before the rest of the body. If it does, it's quite possible that it's because it's been susceptible to a disease process that we've inflicted on it. And the most likely disease process we've inflicted on it is atherosclerosis, cardiovascular vascular disease. And the brain, being this extraordinary complex organ, has to have an unbelievable amount of blood flow to the brain and a tremendous amount of nutrition. So even though it's only a couple of % of your body weight, it's taking up 25% of your calories. So it is clearly unlike anything else in your body. It is you. Kind of, you cut off my finger, it's still me. You cut off both my legs, it's still me. What do we mean by me? Your brain. Yeah. That's what we mean. And that thing is the most complex thing as an independent entity of anything in the known universe. It requires tremendous maintenance. And so when we're short of sleep, we have shorted the maintenance. And if we have given it poor nutrition, we've essentially polluted it. And if we don't exercise, then we haven't done something that turns out to be incredibly useful for the brain's cardiovascular health, which is it needs to be periodically stressed. So people, for example, that just take a stroll for their walk are leaving something important on the table. What you need to do as well is you need to punctuate your exercise with intensity. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you may walk and take a nice stroll, but then you need to go up and down some steps until you're breathing very hard. You need to do that on a routine basis for that last 45 seconds or minute and a half of exercise. You want to punctuate it with some stress. That appears to be a very useful thing in terms of the brain's function. Just as the bones don't do well if we stroll along perfect street. We want to actually have shocks to the system because that will strengthen the bones. So that's why hiking is an awful lot better. And that's why some people that can't hike, I'll have them go up even one little 6-inch concrete step somewhere and then jump down. You know, if they're relatively frail, we might have them just jump down just a few inches. If you're younger and stronger, I might have you jump down, 18 inches onto some concrete. Do that 10 times a week, just do 10 little shocks at it. So by putting these little shock waves through the system, it tells the genes inside the cells of the bones that we need to get stronger because we're going to face periodic stress. So this is the same type of thing that needs to happen in the brain with exercise. The cardiovascular system needs to get the message that once in a while we're in trouble. We need to have maximum perfusion. We're going to need to build more capillary beds. We're going to have the capacity to push more blood through there because every once in a while we're going to get challenged and we need to be ready. That's what we do. Okay. So by doing this, we want that brain as vascularized as possible. We want it rested at night with sleep. We want excellent nutrition so there isn't a bunch of extra and unnecessary debris in the food that the poor liver and kidneys are trying to filter out. We want the blood to be as clean as possible. We want nice nutrition in there. I'm no big believer in hypernutrition. I don't think you need to be stuffing, greens in there with both hands any more than stuff healthy food in general. Okay. I don't think there's any evidence to support that. But what we want to do is healthy food that's non-toxic, exercise punctuated by intense exercise for a little bit, good sleep. If we do those things, Marlene, we are reducing considerably the chances that we're going to wind up with the dementia process.
Yeah, it's perfect. I have a saying that I love, and I say it to everybody: happy, healthy, dead. That's what we should be like, Doug, right? Happy, healthy, dead. And when my students or clients come, for cooking or nutrition or whatever, I always try and say to them, look, what you eat doesn't stop here. It goes, it's like they don't think about it. They think, oh, I'm just eating. No, that's what you're putting into your brain cells as well. So, I try and make it lighthearted and a lot of fun. But as you know, dementia is a huge growing problem now. So that's why I wanted to ask you about that. That's just fantastic. The other thing I wanted to share with my viewers is you've had this fantastic idea to open the Living Wisdom Library. Or you could call it Dr. Doug's Survival Kit, whatever. But globally, I know you help so many people and you have so much free information on there, which is just wonderful. Could you talk a little bit about the new library, how you've set it up and what's in there?
Yes, this is a few years ago, I ran into a young lady who is actually a trained political scientist. And she's got loads of talent in the therapy arena, and she's also pretty smart. And so she became my collaborator as we're now moving towards finishing a major book in psychology that's new. And the book's formulated around what I have called for many years esteem dynamics. And the Living Wisdom Library is essentially the idea that wisdom is it's the living embodiment of this serenity prayer, and that is that do you know the difference between when to follow your instincts and when not to follow them? The truth is that animals just follow their instincts. That's the only wisdom they have. Yeah. And if that wisdom is not up to the task of a puzzling new problem in the modern environment, then they're in trouble. So if they're a moth that keeps flying into the light, we can't teach them to not fly into the light. They're going to fly into the light, and it's going to be a problem. The human beings have the capacity to feel the pull of their instincts and actually to figure out at times very carefully why that pull should not be honored and when you need to go the other direction. Okay. So this is what wisdom is. This is why young people may be very smart and have great intuitive judgment, but they can't have wisdom. Wisdom, a young person can't be wise. They could just be competent as all get out. And they look wise, but they're not, okay? If we revisit that young person 50 years later, it's very likely that we're going to see wisdom, because they will have had to go through the path really thinking through what was the right thing, but finding that their instincts pulled them into a trap. Maybe they were too loyal to a boss, for example, or too loyal to a company. And it turns out that that company then did them wrong a few years later, and they fully expected that as an incredibly good member of the tribe that they would have been saved, and they found out, no, that isn't how it works in the modern environment, okay? So so I'm not encouraging that everybody become a self-interested shark, but what I'm saying is that our instincts can actually get activated and encourage us to take actions that are not actually in our best interest. Okay, and this is tricky business. And so the Living Wisdom Library is based on my thinking over the last 30 years. It's been informed by this unusual and revolutionary biological approach to psychology. That biological approach to psychology is fundamentally this, and that is that the psychology of the 20th century in academia and elsewhere has not grasped the fact that a human is an animal. That is just not, we don't think of ourselves as animal, we think of ourselves as humans, and then all the other things around. And we're so fancy and so smart, and we can build rocket ships, but there's all kinds of reasons to conceptually not grasp ourselves as animals. Because of that, the psychology of the world tends to think of human psychology and humans as something that we personally manufacture through our education, enculturation, and our personal ability to make ourselves into whoever we want to be. And none of this is true, okay? It turns out that what you are is you're just an extraordinarily fancy animal. And so the fancy animal is so dazzling in what it's capable of doing, it's capable of actually talking itself into the fact that it's not an animal. And so we get therapy, not even talking about the fact that your main thing in life and your big worry is your sexual competitiveness.
Yeah.
How did that get lost? And the answer is it got lost behind the dazzling capabilities of humans that led us to not think of ourselves as animals. Esteem dynamics is the realization that we are a special kind of animal that desires esteem. Esteem is the feeling, or it's a signal that other people give us that tells us that we're valuable. We want to be invited, we want to be included, we want to be valued, we want to be loved. That's because we're a unique kind of creature that finds ourselves, and we survived and thrived embedded in villages. That's how human beings evolved, and that's how human beings are designed. The same hand that was designed to grasp things in the Stone Age, it wasn't built to type on your keyboard. The fact that you can type on your keyboard is remarkable, but that's not what it was built for. Okay, it was built for doing the work of the Stone Age to get you fed and to do your hair fancy so that you could be more attractive. It was also designed to help communicate with other people by showing them pictures. The hands were designed for certain things in the Stone Age, and so is the mind. And the Stone Age's fundamental mind design is esteem. It's all about, are we earning esteem? The modern environment will encourage you to bluff your way to get it. It will encourage you to try to get 2,000 hits on Facebook from some picture showing that you got a cool glass of wine, overlooking some cool thing with some cool people. Okay, whether or not you were there or not, or whether or not you hate those people, or whether, no matter what kind of time you had, there's an encouragement to try to get a bunch of feedback from other people, even though they're not there and you don't even know who they are. That's the esteem-seeking chip inside of the human. And increasingly, we're finding that chip, that's sort of like the pleasure trap of esteem. So Esteem Dynamics and the Living Wisdom Library is about trying to look at some of these type of problems from a very basic biological process and see where we have wandered off, where our instincts are pulling us away from being wise. And the quote, you know, if there's a quote that I want to be known for of anything that I've said, it's that happiness results from esteem earned in the right way from the people that matter. Okay, that so when I have someone that's in trouble psychologically and confused, I go back to that fundamental. You know, are we earning esteem? Not trying to get it, but are we earning it? Okay, are we earning esteem from being valuable in some way to somebody in our village, people that are important? Are we earning esteem in the right way? Or are we bluffing them? Are we showing off? Are we doing something that is cool looking or sexy looking, or telling them what they want to hear? You know, you'll hear the wisdom of the ages ringing through this. John McDougall saying, yeah, people love to hear good news about their bad habits. How many dietary doctors have made a lot of money from telling people things that they wanted to hear? Okay. Then we wonder why they're quietly drinking some alcohol, you know, behind their success. Because the truth is that they may want to dull the internal voice that knew that they were a charlatan. Okay, so the truth is that we want to earn esteem in the right way from the people that matter, and whatever that winds up with, we'll live with that result. Okay, this is the way we want to live. We just keep right on this path. Are we earning esteem? Are we trying to cheat our way to it? Are we earning it? Are we doing it in the right way? And are we focused on the people that matter to us? If we start focusing on you're not designed to care about everybody. Okay? There are people that matter to you. There's people in this world right now. There's a bunch of doctors out there that are selling, oh, I don't know, they're selling stomach bypass removal surgeries, and they're selling chocolate drinks to try to, you know, to help people, quote, lose a little weight. And you know what? I just can't chase esteem from those people. I don't have time. Okay. My time and energy are limited. So I focus on attempting to explain and help those people that, you know, some good messages have reached, that are honestly and diligently attempting to be wise in their lives. They may struggle. Of course, they're going to struggle because the modern environment has put so many distortions in your way and so many obstacles in your path that it is difficult for your instincts to not take over. It's difficult to be wise, difficult to make good decisions, difficult to actually optimize your happiness in an environment that's designed to confuse you. Okay. So this is the story of the Living Wisdom Library and the book that Jen and I are completing. It's the story of how to live your life in the best way, keeping an eye out, a principled eye out for the traps that are particularly prevalent in the world today.
It's just very beautifully expressed, and you know, that's why you're so loved in the world, because you're so truthful. You speak from your heart, and it's a bit like, I know you would probably give someone a refund if you felt you couldn't help them. That's the type of person I know you are. You've got a heart the size of Goliath, and it's very unusual in this world today. And you know, that's why we have to keep spreading your work, Doug. You're just such a gift to the world, and this new book sounds just absolutely wonderful, because you know, not everybody has the passion or I hate to use the word willpower, because I have a very warrior spirit. I'm very blessed. I don't need to be told to do something. I'm probably a nightmare to a lot of people, but that's just my personality. I'm a motivator. You know, we've been working from home. My alarm goes off every hour and I get off this computer and I do downward dogs, you know, because otherwise I'm sitting here the whole day in a chair, like being strapped into an airplane. So, you know, that's what I try and help my students and clients with, to be self-disciplined, to be a self-starter, and not just come to me for me to take their money if they can't do it. So, you know, I love how you express that. It's absolutely stunning. you're just such a beautiful soul, and you have a revolution of the heart, which is what you want to try and put around the world, right?
Absolutely. Just there to do the best we can.
You know, there's so many people, as you know, struggling all the time, thousands of people with addictions and different things. And I know you did fantastic, you know, original research way back, and you've got some fantastic clinical studies that share the success of thousands of patients and how you've helped these people break out of all these self-destructive habits. Is there stuff like that in your wisdom library as well that people could go watch some videos or read some, you know, blogs from you there?
Well, on the we got two parts of this site. We have
Okay.
the first there's the obviously the free site open to everybody has a great deal of my major lectures on there. So pretty much all my major McDougall lectures. So people are you know, please feel free to look. There's hours of those presentations on that site. The Living Wisdom Library, we charge people $3 a month.
Oh wow.
These are that's what Jen and I enables us to take time away from counseling and to sort of sit and think and then come up with useful encapsulations. We actually have more than one motive for that. One motive is to sort of share this with everybody that's interested. Another motive is we're sort of putting the bricks in place for showing particularly young people that might be interested in this career how to counsel others.
Great.
So we're quietly building a curriculum in there of how to look at clinical problems and the counseling helping process to essentially I'm getting to the point where I need to replicate myself.
Yeah.
So and so this is Jen was my first clone, and it's always when someone's prettier and younger and more enthusiastic. If you can be more enthusiastic, young people with a lot of energy. So she's superb at this. So she's diligently listened and taken notes, and then done her own take on the way we look at this. But we think so similarly that very often our prescriptions for a given individual are almost identical.
Yeah.
And it's heartening for me to see that. So it's heartening for me to see that the way I'm looking at problems, that I've already have evidence that it makes sense, but it's good to see that another mind comes to the same conclusions. This tells me that this is now ready to be encapsulated and shared with the world more broadly, so that you know, thousands and maybe more young clinicians can learn these concepts and then use them in their work. So that's another thing that's quietly going on with the library.
Wow, you know, the busy people get the work done. That's what we always say. But, you know, your work, Doug, it offers such unique insights into, you know, so many factors that make us susceptible to dietary and lifestyle excesses. And you know, you present ways to restore the whole biological processes that are designed by nature to keep us running at maximum efficiency and vitality. You know, we should all be able to get up and jump out of bed in the morning. You know, I mean, I look at older people and, you know, I mean, I think about Bill, you know, my beloved Bill, you know, he's nearly 80. He's like a boy. We go hiking and cycling, and we don't even know what it is to have a headache or a sneeze or a cold. And that's the thing we want to give to everybody else, because I always say, how can we have a healthy world with so many sick people? Right?
Yep.
So, you know, what you're doing in cloning all these others and getting students on board to teach, that's just wonderful, absolutely fantastic, you know. So this is like a marriage made in heaven with you and Jen and the work you're doing as well. And you don't even need to have the hassle of having a wife to do that.
No.
See?
Jen's got Michael Greger to cook her food for her.
Oh,
so she's got that part covered, and so more time for her to focus.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, you know, I think in the last months, I think people, you know, really have come to roost and found, I don't know, I feel around food and these unprecedented times, right? I mean, you know, there's so much fear and everything. We try and spread joy and encouragement like you do, but I'm encouraged to see that, you know, a lot of people are discovering new habits, Doug, and insights and about what it means to really truly nourish themselves. So, you know, that's kind of exciting to me too. I mean, I'm one of these annoying people. I know I am, because people tell me, they say, "Are you ever miserable? Why are you always happy?" It's so annoying. And it's not coming from any other source other than what we do, how we eat, how we live. We have a very simple life. Our needs are very simple, you know. So I'm lucky that, you know, and you're the same, and I know you are, and that's why we have to get you down to all the corners of the globe. And the new library, the Library of Wisdom, is fantastic. I'm really excited, and I can't wait to get the new book. Have you got a title yet or not? Is it secret?
Yes, but it's a big secret.
Top secret. Okay.
To get back to me, we'll probably, that title, we will probably let the world know what the title is in January.
Oh, nice.
The title is very intriguing, and the whole book is going to be very different than anything that anybody's thinking.
Yeah, so, I can imagine.
We're not telling what's actually happening until we're a little further along.
Yeah, I can imagine it's completely going to be something that's never been done before, and that's what's so exciting about it. Have you got anything else you would like to share?
I don't think so. So just a pleasure seeing you. You're just the same beautiful, vibrant, happy, enthusiastic, optimistic person that I remember. It's great to see you, and
Thank you.
I resonate with your inherently optimistic and vigorous feel for life. In any crisis like the one we're in now, there's always things learned. There's always opportunity. Yeah. There's always growth, and so I don't lament the fact that this tragedy happened. It is too bad, and a lot of bad comes out of tragedy, of course. Yeah. But there's always silver linings, and we need to be on the lookout for them so we don't waste the opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, as always, Dr. Lisle, it's an absolute pleasure. I could talk to you forever. So we will get you sometime. I don't know whether I'll be in Scotland or Ireland or England or Wales or Portugal or America. I don't know, but we will get together, right?
We certainly will.
I'm sorry it got quite dark here, because obviously it's very late in the evening and you're there in Hawaii very early in the morning. So thank you for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I just love and adore you, as do everybody else that I speak to. So I bow down to you in admiration.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll speak again soon.
Very good. That's great.